faster and more intense. That was his main direction. He just wanted us to speed through it.
George is notorious for saying, after a take, do it again, faster, more intensity. He certainly said to me, was, it's terrific tonic, and he'd do it again faster. But that's it, I didn't get more intensity. I don't think 3PO with more intensity would be bearable, do you?
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Faster and More Intense. I'm your host, Shiloh Camrath, and back with us is the incredible George Costel.
Did you miss me?
Kind of. We only realized you were gone about halfway through the talk.
Oh, that's earlier than I expected.
Yeah. I did appreciate your comments last week, though, correcting us many times.
It's what I do.
It's quite good. Yeah. Yep. I am, of course, referring to last week's podcast, which I recorded with Jeffrey Cagle from over on the Imperial Talker. And so we had a good conversation about, let's see, what was it? C-3PO, that one-shot comic, as well as some of the news that came out. And George was not there, but he added his own flavorful comments in post. So you can read all of those telling us how wrong we were on the news, which were quite wrong.
Not wrong, just out of date, perhaps.
Yeah, out of touch. But we were unfortunately not able to do Darth Vader last week, so we're going to be doing the Darth, I think it's 17, right? Or 18?
19. You're off.
Oh, wow. See, this is why George is around, to keep everybody else on track here. So we weren't able to do Darth Vader 19 last week, so we're going to be doing that this time along with Obi-Wan and Anakin number 4, and of course any of this week's news, of which I am gleefully ignorant of. So, George, what happened this week?
J.J. Abrams, of course, is just almost, it feels like he's always in the news. But, after making a comment last week that Rey's parents weren't in the movie, then pretty quickly dialing back on it to explain that they just weren't a factor in her life within the movie. Abrams, I think the Tribeca Film Festival, I believe it's the Tribeca Film Festival, he was talking about how Harrison Ford's injury actually helped the production of Episode 7. Apparently, when they went on hiatus because of his injury, he was able to think about one of the elements that up to that point in filming he didn't think was working, namely the relationship between Finn and Rey. And once they came back from that, he was reinvigorated, had a whole new angle to take it, and I guess they reshot a lot of that material, and the reshot stuff is what ends up in the final film. Yeah. And I think everyone kind of agreed that, of all the problems The Force Awakens has, their chemistry between Finn and Rey was not one of them.
Yeah, that was...
So whatever he did worked, apparently. So thank you, Harrison, for breaking your leg.
Yeah, the scenes between them were very fun. I mean, they weren't... of all the scenes in The Force Awakens that you could have an issue with, those really weren't the ones that you could. Not from a... continuity standpoint, and certainly not from a storytelling standpoint. They were, quite well done. But the whole thing about J.J. Abrams saying that about Rey's parents and then walking it back, it just seems like a really dumb thing to say. I don't even understand why he did it.
It's not that... the comment here's the thing. The way the internet culture is that everyone reads way more into everything than they could or perhaps should. And so, when he said this comment, he meant it to be innocuous. He's asked the question as an interview. It's not like he's just going to be like, no, I'm not going to answer that. And so the way he phrased it, you're right, could have been better. But at the same token, if he's posed with it, people are going to ask him about Star Wars. He's not going to say no to those questions. So I'm just glad he didn't draw it out longer than he needed to, and it was within a couple of days that he stomped it out.
Yeah,
So,
I just feel like J.J. Abrams, I mean, he knows how the internet works, and he knows about how stuff he says is going to be taken. It just, I don't understand why he said it, particularly in that way. Because, I mean, he's got to know, there's millions of theories about Rey's parentage and all this, it's one of the big
True enough.
mysteries of his, new movie that he created. So, yeah, I don't know.
It happens. And I mean, again, it was essentially a day, I think. I think he stamped it out really quick. So, I mean, you're right, but, like obviously, he could have phrased it better. But he stamped it out, and now that he had, I think this was at, a forum at Tribeca, or, an actual sit-down interview. So it was, a much more deliberate statement he gave here about, the making of the movie. So I thought that was fun. Speaking of Harrison Ford and Han Solo, we told you a while back that Harrison was auctioning off his one of the jackets he wore for The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually closed last week, and I don't think it got mentioned, which is fine because I was essentially taking point on it anyway. But after stalling at $60,000 for a while, with I think you and I both predicted it would go way up. The jacket closed at $191,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it had a big push there at the end then.
Mm-hmm. Which we should have expected. I mean, if you just if you eBay a good bit, you kind of recognize that in most auctions, a lot of auctions, most of the action will happen in the last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So,
I think we predicted it would definitely be higher than $100,000. I think is what we.
Yeah, we predicted it would reach into the six figures.
Yeah.
And I was afraid for a second it wouldn't, but it did. So good for us. We were not wrong.
Yeah, we were only off by $91,000. I mean, in some cases.
Well, hey,
that's
I mean, we said six figures. We could have been anywhere in the six figures.
I guess that's true.
You could say we predicted this exact result. You heard it here first, folks.
Yep. Make us famous, internet. Yeah.
But let's see. More news from last week that didn't get mentioned. More information about the upcoming Battlefront DLCs was released. EA announced that the next two heroes that are going to be coming in the Cloud City pack are, of course, Lando Calrissian and Dengar, who I don't know if anyone was exactly predicting, but I think most thought was a pretty distinct possibility.
Him or Bosk, I think, was
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Bosk, we mentioned IG-88, but we figured it would all be the various bounty hunters from Empire are their only remaining options, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dengar's, I expected later than IG-88 and Bosk, but if the other two come, then I guess I might have expected him over, say, Forlom or Zuckuss, just because they're such a package team,
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. That's fun. And then EA clarified, and they did confirm that it's going to be 8 total DLC heroes, 4 heroes, 4 villains. And I know some people, myself included, were worried that it was just going to be 4 total, 2 heroes, 2 villains. So helps kind of justify the inclusion of Nia Nub and Greedo.
Yeah.
A little
bit.
Which,
why you would include Nia Nub in a Jabba the Hutt or in a Tatooine-themed
well,
DLC?
hold up. The DLC was Outer Rim. There was 2 maps.
Okay.
And one of them was Sullust.
Okay, alright. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense. But I'm still going to complain about Nia Nub.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. Speaking of that DLC, I know StarWars.com did a list of Easter eggs on the DLC map. And frankly, I didn't think much of them were Easter eggs as much as they were making sure they were, movie accurate. I mean, some of it's fun stuff. You can see the Rancor is in the den, but he's deceased. I thought the one true Easter egg is apparently there's some references to the trash compactor on the Sullust map. There's an actual trash compactor, and you can see a Dianoga. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. I hope that what Battlefront does in the future to make the maps a little more fun will be... So Battlefront 2 kind of started this a little bit, but adding mechanical things in the world. So one thing I think of is like the Death Star map on Battlefront 2. It had these little panels that you could destroy, and it would extend or raise the bridges. Or
Mustafar had the same thing,
Yeah. So there was some fun little things like that. The Tantive 4 had a little one where you could open up a path by blowing up something. And so it'd be really cool if we could get something like that in Battlefront. If nothing else, just for a little flavor. But it'd be really cool if they could actually work that into gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, map interactivity is always a great thing to have in video games. I don't play the current Battlefront enough to know if there's anything like that. But yeah, certainly something you'd hope. It's certainly something you'd hope they could bring in. It should be pretty easy for them to do. So hey, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah.
Then sort of news, kind of a preview. StarWars.com, I don't know if you guys saw, ran an article about a group of elite stormtroopers coming to the Marvel Star Wars series. And so it's there's an interview with Jason Aaron. They're going to be led by Sergeant Creel, who, if you don't remember, is the guy from Gracchus's Arena, the trainer. And so even back then, we kind of called that there was something up with him. And then it was eventually revealed Imperial agent, and now it turns out he's the leader of this elite stormtrooper squad. And you're looking at some of the concept art here. I really like all these guys. Aaron says in the interview he took inspiration from actually the Bad Batch, the story reel.
Yep.
And really, the biggest thing I like, and I know it'll never happen, but I look at this and I'm like, man, I want action figures of these guys.
Yeah.
And like back in the day when Hasbro was like regularly pumping out SA figures, this is something they would actually consider doing, like just a big set. Insofar as they could just, hopefully not actually have to sculpt new figures and just do repacks. And in some of them, that's obviously going to be impossible. You're looking here at the Bazooka Trooper, who would probably need a new sculpt. But I mean, the art's really cool. The concept sounds really cool. It's a nice little preview for the next arc, and it's a nice little thing, I think, to break up. Oh, go on.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying it's kind of cool, but I don't like the concept of it a lot. I liked the Bad Batch story arc. I mean, it was fun, but I didn't necessarily care for the concept, and especially the Empire, which is very
that's
uniform,
my
very
thought.
Faceless.
Mm-hmm.
This seems too individualistic.
You have to imagine this is like a near one-of-a-kind unit, because I actually thought the same thing. As cool as these guys are, this is something that would feel more at home in the clone army than the Imperial army.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's the cool factor of this is great, but as far as from a continuity and just to make sense in universe,
exactly. And so my thought is, if this is like a one of its kind sort of unit, then I can see the Empire maybe not caring too much about 7 or so guys. But yeah, I'm with you. It definitely, it might be because I'm so used to seeing this for the clones and not the Empires. Maybe that's part of why I'm so excited to see them in action. Either way, it'll be nice to have an issue like solidly focusing on the Imperial side of things, not Vader, but more at the infantry level. And the cover for the issue, I think, is awesome. So
yeah. I would almost actually so from Rogue One, from the trailer, if those Shadow Troopers are indeed what we think they are, more elite-type units, I would like to see them, maybe a squadron of those kind of Shadow Troopers, because they are very uniform, they have a different look, but yet if you put them in this Star Wars comic, it would add them, because, one of the things about Rogue One is, like, why are there these elite troopers, and then we never see them in, the original trilogy. But if this is in here, then, you can show that they are around. We just never saw them in the films, but they are.
Well,
used.
I think before we talk too much about that, we should see Rogue One. because there could be a very good reason for them not being around in the original trilogy.
Yeah, there could.
That being,
yeah, I like
they're not.
I like the
as
idea though. If those are the special forces, of them being more uniform like that, as opposed to being very individualistic like the Bad Batch.
We'll see. Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the Bad Batch. Kind of reminds me almost of Republic Commando a little bit.
Yeah.
In some of the builds. Some of it actually reminds me. The Bazooka Trooper reminds me of. Actually, I think it was a clone variant from the Revenge of the Sith video game. It was I think actually more of a Flame Trooper. I think it was a clone Blaze Trooper, I think was the name. But he was just a really big, bulky looking clone. And the look just reminds me of that. But I mean, it could be, coincidental, with, once you get like a collar up around the helmet like that, it all sorts seems the same. So yeah, I regardless, I'm excited to see these guys. I know they're not the most uniform thing in the world, kind of different from what we've come to expect from the Empire. But I think it could be a whole lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to them, for no other reason than that, perhaps. And I think that's most of the news I had for this week. If we want to delve quickly into personal Star Wars experiences, I can brag for a moment.
Again? All right, go ahead.
So once again, at the Apple Store down in Soho, I met an actress who was in Attack of the Clones, Rose Byrne, who I don't know if Shiloh, you know her, but she actually has a very small role in Attack of the Clones. She actually plays one of Padme's handmaidens, probably the lead handmaiden in that movie. But then, because she's actually gone on to become like a relatively big name, like in other movies, like she's in the new X-Men movie. She was in X-Men First Class, Bridesmaids, Neighbors, the upcoming Neighbors sequel, Spy, Damages. She's done a good bit. And Star Wars was just actually one of her first roles before she made it big. So yes, much like Joel Edgerton, who was the last person I met down there, became much bigger after their initial small Star Wars bit part.
So how did you meet her down there? Were you just was it just random, or was she doing an event there?
No, yeah, they do events at the Apple Store. Okay. Like if you ever see an event like posted about on iTunes, it was filmed there. And so I just check the schedule every so often. Because like I said, that's where I got Joel Edgerton. I met her there. I got Arnold Schwarzenegger there last year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, some big names go to that Apple Store.
Yeah.
And then I was lucky there was no crowd, so I got her. I actually got Susan Sarandon too, who was also at the event. Not that I particularly cared about meeting her. Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, remember this is getting published. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a lovely person, but just wasn't the draw.
Yeah, just end it with bless her heart, and then you can say anything you want, just as long as you end it with bless her heart, it's okay.
Oh, bless her heart. But that said, perhaps we should move into the comics? Yes? No? Maybe so?
Probably a good idea, seeing as how we have 2 of them this week.
Yeah, well, we don't have show notes, so it should probably be a pretty quick talk. Let's start, I think, with Darth Vader. It came out first, so it should be discussed first.
Right.
And I thought this was a pretty solid conclusion to the Shu-Torun arc. What about you?
Yep. It was a solid conclusion. I don't think it was as good as some of the earlier ones, but
I think that's fair.
It ended it out as I liked how they ended the Shu-Torun Wars. On my checklist were that more of Darth Vader's enemies die. So the twin, or at least one of the twins, died. That was good.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec.
Yeah. And my other thing that I wanted was Queen Trios to stay in power, and she did. So I'm happy.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, there was some stuff here. I felt there was a few pages devoted on Baron Rubik's that I actually almost surprised me, just because we haven't seen much of the Ore Barons out of the context of like all of them meeting. So it felt kind of weird to just see him. But on the same token, there was stuff I liked. I was surprised at the start of the issue, because I think I told you how I didn't anticipate either of the twins surviving this issue. And I certainly didn't anticipate Aolin getting betrayed by Morit like that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
That was a twist.
Mm-hmm.
And how'd you like that?
It was okay. I was neither kind of here nor there on getting betrayed. I really liked the scene with Anakin getting burned. Sorry, not Anakin.
Aolin. But that was a good scene.
Getting burned in the lava, and then Darth Vader kind of putting her out of her misery after he gets the information. Which, it's another one of those scenes which, okay, sure, you can look at it, Darth Vader's getting information, but it's like, I can see where it benefits him, but it also makes him not as much of a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like, you can totally play it as completely selfish, but in a way, it also makes him less of a, 100%, villain.
You have to imagine Vader's got a decent sense of empathy for people who get burned alive by lava.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it only makes him 99.4% villain now, So I thought that was a good moment, nice little callback there.
And I kind of liked... I
was going to move on to another piece, so you go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say, Vader, like you said, kind of mercy kills her. But right as he does so, she's about to say something. She gets cut off. I am and I'm assuming she's going to say unworthy. Which almost kind of plays into, because she had an earlier scene with Vader where she kind of asked him to train her, kind of foreshadowing that she and Morit would eventually, come to blows. I just didn't anticipate it happening like this. And so you have to imagine, because amusingly, right after this issue came out, Marvel sent out solicitations that featured Morit in them. Looks like he and Vader are going to be dueling on the, partially constructed rig of the Executor, which just sounds like a blast.
Yeah.
But I have to imagine when they come to blows, Vader will not be so merciful with him.
But really my favorite piece of the issue, which I just loved, was at the end, Queen Trios, resigned to her fate. We can talk about her conversation with Vader at the end, but she's walking in with the captain, and she's like, "Captain, you must dance. That's the culture," which calls back to what her father said way back at the Darth Vader annual issue. I mean, it was such a great bringing the whole circle, bringing the whole story back around. I just loved that line. It was awesome.
It was a very nice line for the end of the issue. I wasn't going to talk about it until later to reflect that, but that's okay. I think, I agree with you. It's a great moment. I want to somewhat table that, because before we get to that, a bunch of other stuff goes down. She has a nice conversation with the droids, which is another thing we'll talk about. But one of the things I very much enjoyed earlier in the issue was the payoff, or at least some of the payoff, to a 000's plan about draining blood. Because I think I mentioned it at the time. It felt odd to devote, so much of the issue that it did in issue 4 of this arc. Yeah, issue 4. So, essentially a plan that we knew wasn't going to actually happen anytime soon. And so I thought it was very smart to have that still factor in to the defeat of, these rebels, even if it didn't actually come close to fruition.
Yeah. That was a good way of tying it around. I think I would have been okay if that had never played a piece of the story to begin with. But since they brought
I
it up,
agree. Yeah, no, exactly. Well, that's where I am. I don't think it was a thing that had to be brought up. And I mean, I think it still will. I don't think this is the last we've seen of it. I think this is going to be a recurring thread for him now that it's out there. But yeah, once it was brought up, I'm glad that they at least did something with it in this manner, and didn't just bring it up and leave it hanging for like 5 issues. And perhaps now would be a halfway decent time to then move into Queen Trios, because as we mentioned, she has a talk with the droids, where she essentially admits she is going to be taking absolutely no sass from them. And 000 actually seems to have a begrudging amount of respect for her, which I thought was quite fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't really remember that conversation very well.
Well, I have the issue in front of me.
Yeah. I remember her conversation with Vader, and I remember her yeah. That's
it immediately segues into the conversation with the droid. Essentially, so here you can see. She talks with Vader about how the Barons are getting crushed, they won't survive. And then she asks Vader if he thinks he chose well for the for her as the ruler of Shu-Torun. And he just simply says there was no other choice. And so, as 000 immediately notes, one can't help but note that could have been taken multiple ways. He could have been implying that you are excellent, or she's like, I know, leave droid, I cannot destroy him, I can destroy you.
Yeah.
And immediately after that, 000 says, with the greatest of respect, Queen Trios, you'll go far. So, I mean, hey, I don't think we've seen him show much respect to any organic outside of Afra and Vader, and even then he can be a bit of a smartass. Yeah. Which isn't to say he wasn't one here. But that's almost like an out-of-character line for him at the end.
Mm-hmm. And it maybe harkens to we may be seeing Queen Trios again, which I am totally okay with, because she's probably my favorite character, her new character that's been introduced to the series. I do like her more than Afra.
I think that's fair. I think she's a very interesting character. And I agree with you. I kind of cut you off earlier, but her scene with the captain, I think, is a lot of fun. And I also thought the captain mentions he's an academy graduate, and I don't know if this was at all a deliberate reference, but it very much reminded me of Lost Stars.
It did.
Where the Imperial Academy students actually do go to a formal dance.
It's basically high school prom dance for evil space Nazis. I mean, it's pretty fun.
Pretty much, or like West Point formal, something to that effect. Who knows? But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So really, here's the thing: anything that makes me think of Lost Stars is a winner in my book.
Yep.
I mean, and in an already great scene, that was just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that pays, or that really says about how great Lost Stars was at, humanizing the Imperials, because as soon as he mentioned that, as soon as he mentioned he's an Academy graduate, he danced, I thought of Lost Stars, and instantly I saw him as somebody under that helmet. Mm-hmm. In the scene before, I saw him as a stormtrooper. In the scene after, I thought of him as somebody under that helmet. I mean, that's all it took to change my, how I saw that, blob on the page. Which...
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, go on.
No, I was done. You can go ahead.
I was just going to say, just think of Rebels, and if it's come close to doing anything like that, not just with stormtroopers, but with really any Imperial officer outside of Callus.
Yeah.
And even with Callus, any episode with him outside of the honorable ones.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't happened, and that's one of the big recurring, things I've had against Rebels is, that opportunity they have, to show Imperials. So they don't have, it's not a show focused on Imperials, but they still have had many chances to humanize them a little more. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just a recurring thing to how great a book Lost Stars was.
Yeah. And here, of course. So, again, great issue. That was excellent. Trios has another good scene with Vader after Rubik's. Once again, she has someone executed.
Yeah,
and she declares.
I really like this lady. She.
Yes, and after that, she declares his daughter to be the new Baroness, and she. The daughter's like, that's not the line of succession. And she's just like, your brother's going to be overjoyed by my wisdom as he knows that objecting to my decisions carries a certain treasonous air.
Yep.
And when Vader asks why, I have found that inexperienced youths not expecting power the most easy to manipulate.
Yep.
And so, again, one of the things we've highlighted, and she says again later, she says, I'm going nowhere, is that Trios is someone acutely aware of her position.
She has resigned to her fate to an incredible degree. I mean, she has taken her fate. She has accepted it. I mean, so much that she is willing to do the same thing that happened to her to somebody else. I mean, she, I think, is the model of how the Empire is built. Mm-hmm. This is how Palpatine built up his Empire. He built it on people who had resigned to their fate and, who were... I mean, I think she's the model person of why an empire even works. Why an authoritarian dictatorship like the Empire, an oppressive regime, works. It's because of people like Queen Trios.
Yeah, and the thing that I think makes her, far more interesting character is that she's not, despite, being forced into this, near impossible situation. I mean, she essentially owns it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's leading the charge on Rubik's Citadel. For all of her, moments of defeat, she still is willing to, when she needs to, stick up to Vader. She's still willing to go along with him even when it looks like they're abandoning her. I mean, she's not going to let knowing her position, make her work any less to get the job done.
Yeah, and she's not a villain, too, and I think that's a big deal. I don't think anyone sees her as a villain. I mean, she has people executed, she's doing the will of the Empire, yada, 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 but she's not a classic villain. I mean, she's just very much a person. She's not black or white, she is solidly gray.
Yeah. Yeah, so, like you said, great issue for her. I feel like we've said that most issues, honestly. But yet another great issue for Queen Trios. In what's possibly her last appearance. I think you and I both hope not. But at the same time,
I think for a while it's her last appearance. I think.
Yeah, who knows why we'd be going back to Shu-Torun?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. Love to see her again. Don't think we need to. But that said, I think you're right. It should be a while before we see them again. And who knows what the situation there will be if we come back in, several months.
Yeah. I could see her in a novel in the future. So, like take Battlefront Twilight Company, for example. They go to a lot of different Imperial worlds and, different Imperial governors and commanders and all. They play a factor in the story. They're not a main driver of the story. They're not any of the main characters. But I could see possibly, Queen Trios in that, where she plays a small role as a plot device kind of thing. They go to Shu-Torun for some reason. Maybe the rebels are invading Shu-Torun or something, and she has a small bit.
I certainly see where you're coming from. It feels like the sort of thing that would have been right at home in Twilight Company.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they go to Shu-Torun, and she plays a couple chapters as the the head of the Imperial opposition, and then whatever. But I think that's where we'd be most likely to see her if she ever makes an appearance.
Yeah, who knows? I thought maybe she could actually show up in the Star Wars comic down the line if they decide to, have them invade Shu-Torun or hide out on Shu-Torun for some... Who knows? Just move around the comics timeline and do what they will. But yeah, again, just not anytime soon. I don't think we need to see her.
Yeah. Well, I would say this issue probably wraps up the best arc of Darth Vader so far. That's what I would say.
I agree. I think the only arc you could argue comes close, I would say, is Vader Down. And even then, that's, crossover arc, so it feels kind of unfair.
Yeah.
Speaking of endings, we should probably talk about the ending here. As Aphra is currently off cavorting in Rebel jail.
Yeah.
And Vader dispatched bounty hunters to find her, which hadn't had any success. But at the end of the issue, he gets a hologram for our good friend, the monocled maniac, Inspector Thanoth.
Yeah. I like the fact that Thanoth is coming back. I liked his character. I think he provided an interesting counterbalance to Vader in kind of a different way than, just another powerful, I've never been a fan of Shiloh. I don't like the counterbalance that he provides. But I do like Thanoth and the way he interacts with Vader. Vader, has to be a little more clever and a little more do whatever he's doing, it has to be, a little more hidden, and I like that. Plus I just like the character of Thanoth. I think he's a space Sherlock. He's pretty cool.
Space Sherlock. He seems like, if nothing else, a principled man.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm with you. I think he's a strong character, but what I like even more is how it forces Vader to act around him.
Yeah.
He can't just be that blunt instrument we kind of expect from him. And I mean, we knew Thanoth was coming back. He was mentioned in solicitations, but I wasn't expecting to see him here. And I wasn't expecting him to have already found Aphra. So that could be very interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, which I think is a pretty brilliant way to bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's an excellent. It continues on the thread of the stolen credits that he was looking into, and it's a good way to bring Aphra back into the story, and I think it was a pretty good move. It doesn't feel forced. I liked it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about all we have to cover from Vader. So let's move earlier and talk about Obi-Wan and Anakin issue 4.
Now this is issue 4 of a 5-part series, right?
Yeah. I believe the next part is the conclusion. I just want to say right now, I think this is an absolutely beautiful cover. You can look at it now. I honestly don't know why Vader's helmet is on it, because I don't even think they much heavy foreshadowing of Vader in the issue.
They don't. They do a thing with Anakin, but we can talk about that in a little bit.
Right. Either way, beautiful, beautiful cover. I'm not going to complain that it's not necessarily the most appropriate to the issue. Because I think that's been the case with a few of the covers in this series.
Yeah, but I'd like to say, though, the Obi-Wan and Anakin covers have all been very beautiful. This entire series has been very beautiful. I love all the colors they're using on this world. All these, especially the splash pages and everything. It's just a gorgeous comic.
Yes. Yeah, we probably will never get tired of talking about it. But yeah, I guess I enjoyed the issue, but outside of the arc, Shiloh, what were your feelings about it?
I would say it's probably the weakest of the 4 so far.
Really?
Yeah,
I liked it more than 3.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I think the reason is the reason I asked you that if it was indeed the 4th of a 5-part series is I think they're going to have a hard time wrapping up this story. Like, okay, we're in the back half of this issue. It should be winding down, but instead it feels like they're just adding more elements to the story.
I mean, on the one hand,
I used to talk about now,
yes.
Anakin trying to leave the Order. We've got,
but here's what I'll say:
coming war.
I mean, I was going to say Anakin leaving the Order was teased as far back as the first issue, so that's not something new that they're adding.
Yeah, but
if anything, I'd say that's something they're finally answering.
Yeah,
and that's something that can be answered in the present.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've also got kind of a coming war between open and closed, and the introduction of this new guy who not exactly sure what he's about. So it just feels like when they should be slowing down, they're just ramping up. And I think that they're going to have to do a lot of stuff to close out the last issue. And I think this next issue is just going to feel really rushed and have to deal with a lot of stuff really quickly.
I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I mean, I think we said that about the last issue of Vader, and I thought it did a good job handling it. I mean, essentially, here's the thing. I only think there's essentially one... They just have to pull off this last battle sequence. And as long as they do that, then, I think Anakin staying with the Order could fall into place pretty naturally. I do agree that it would be good to have spent more time with this new character introduced, keeping up the Sarah, their name is. It would have been nice to see more of Sarah's work, keeping the history of the world alive. But I think it's not going to be the hardest thing for them to do, honestly. I feel like, if nothing else, like I said, the Shu-Torun War had at least as many moving parts to close up in its last issue. And I thought it did a pretty admirable job.
But, I mean, Shu-Torun War, all it really had to close up was that battle between the twins and the final battle for the castle. I mean, this...
but it also had to clear up, it had to touch on BT and 000, why they were at all discussing the, their plan to steal blood.
Or whatever.
Yeah. To adjust, I mean, there was some stuff that you could say it had to do, but then just didn't bother doing, or just kind of hand-waved. Like, it had to deal with, say, Shiloh, the ramifications of his actions, and all it said was, Vader gets the info and Shiloh essentially flees.
Yeah.
So it's not like it needs to spend a lot of time.
Yeah, I just feel like this one has a little more important stuff to wrap up, though.
I mean, what do we have outside the battle? Which... I mean, as that last issue of Vader showed, can be done in a few pages.
Well, yeah, we got that, I guess. And then also, the whole Anakin thing, I mean, is he going to actually leave for a while and then decide to come back in the last issue? I mean, that's a lot of stuff to squeeze into that little bit.
I mean,
is he just going to, go out on the streets of Coruscant, spend a night in a cardboard box, and then be like, I changed my mind, I'm coming back?
But, I think you're missing... Well, here's the thing. Obviously not, I think. Because, like I said, at the start of the series, in, present time, on the planet, they bring up Anakin's decision to leave the Order. That was done on this world. And so all they need...
Yeah, I might have forgotten that, I think.
All they need to do is say Anakin, get Anakin to stick around for one more mission, have it be this mission, and then at the end of this whole, conundrum, Anakin learns, oh, maybe I should stick with the Jedi.
Okay,
I don't think that takes much time.
All right, I didn't know about that. I didn't know that they tied in that like that.
Anakin leaving the Order was teased from the start of the series.
All right, yeah, I didn't remember that. I was thinking that they were going to have a whole separate storyline for Anakin leaving the Order and then coming back by the end of the issue.
No, not at all.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes a little more sense as far as... Okay, that doesn't make it quite as busy as I thought they were going to have to be.
No, I think that they'll have plenty of time to hash everything out. We'll see. I think it'll be an issue that relies... I mean, the whole battle thing doesn't need to be done for a while, because I have enough faith in, the visuals of the issue that just a few pages, a big splash page, should get the point across of, what's going down here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was... Yeah.
Go on. I
was saying, maybe we should actually talk about some of the story of the issue itself.
Yeah, I was about to think the same thing.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that?
Sure. So, I guess really the first big thing, we go back to, and we get to see the open, base, or the closed.
Mm-hmm. The fortress home of the Open.
Yeah, and apparently their entire existence has been trying to figure out how to rebuild these robots, or get some power source that powers these robots to work.
It's getting Anakin to fix it, I think.
Yeah, never mind the fact that all this technology that's been floating up, they decided to throw away, because whatever. But so they're going to finally try to destroy the open or the closed. I forget which one is which.
They're trying to destroy the closed.
Try to destroy the closed. Yeah, so the coming big battle. And there's a line before they leave to go do the battle, which I think is quite telling, and it says, "We'll leave the youth here with Anakin." And that seems to tie in really well with something of that one guy, who's been trying to keep the history alive by saying, the youth are our only hope, the youth is who we can get through to. So I think that is a pretty, telling about how the youth are going to save this planet and come together and decide to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, which really does, back when that girl kind of tricked Anakin, and you had said that she had, actually, was kind of, had better intentions than I had, which I think you're probably going to end up being right, and she is probably going to switch sides, free Anakin, and then the youth are going to save the day in a Pocahontas moment.
I don't think the youth will save the day. I mean, I don't anticipate Mother Pran surviving next issue, honestly. I suppose she could. But I mean, I think there's a few lines that, obviously, this is a world that's been racked by war. And, they established that at the start of the series, for centuries. And, so you have lines like you mentioned, when they first bring Anakin, they say, this changes everything. We can finally destroy the clothes. We can finally win the war once the droid is fixed. Obi-Wan is with Grecker, and, Grecker's kind of bad-mouthing, all the crap that the closed have done. And then Obi-Wan kind of says, at this point, does it even matter who started the war?
Yeah.
So, there's that. And then think of, Sarah, I think, has it's a really effective scene at the end of the issue. Essentially kind of cross-cutting, I don't even know if that's the word. She's doing her narration over the speech that Pran is giving to Anakin and Kalara. Mm-hmm. And she's saying, the closed and open wish to forget the old time. They wish to erase it because it's just a reminder of how they failed. And they want to destroy everything more than they want to destroy each other. And the only thing that either faction understands is war.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense when we consider how at each other's throats everyone was when we first saw them.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Sarah person, they had called the Jedi because they found some kind of hologram recording of a Jedi. Mm-hmm. Was that a Jedi or was that a Sith? And she really didn't know, because that sure looked an awful lot like a Sith to me.
I guess because it looks like there might be some lightning. I think what you're kind of getting is that you can barely see who it is. The hood is up and all that. And my hunch is that's just so they don't have to tie a specific Jedi to what happened here.
Oh, okay.
That would be my hunch. I don't know, Knights of the Old Republic. The player character is Revan.
It was. I was getting a little Revan-esque feel from that, but yeah.
No, I feel that a little bit. I thought the same thing, and I couldn't really tell you why. It definitely looks like not necessarily traditional robes, which is fun. Because I think the Jedi robes are really boring. But it's essentially Revan showed up in the Knights of the Old Republic comic books. But whenever he did, they had to have his hood up and hide his face or show him from behind because they didn't want to tie a specific face to the character.
Yeah.
And so it's not until there's one issue where he gets this big dramatic reveal where you see him all from the front, and that's literally the first scene he has his mask on. And then eventually the Old Republic came around, gave him a canon face, and suddenly artists stopped caring about not showing it. Which, hey, more power to him.
Yeah. I never realized he got a canon face.
Yeah, eventually. And like I said, in the Old Republic, where he was a character, they couldn't keep on giving him the mask.
Yeah.
and they couldn't, have you fight this guy with him having the hood up the whole time so you can't actually see his face. It would just be kind of ridiculous. So I think eventually biting the bullet, after a decade after the game came out, just saying, this is Revan's face, live with it, I think is kind of reasonable.
Yeah, by that time, everybody is going to play the game has played it, so... Yeah.
Exactly. So, hey, that's that. We got really off topic there, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there was a whole lot more to discuss in this issue. The only other thing, I guess, is probably Palpatine and Anakin's conversation, which... Nothing spectacular about it, just, Palpatine being...
Yeah, I will say, this is probably, I'll give you... it's certainly weaker than any of the stuff with Palpatine and Anakin going to the lower city. But at the same time, I thought this was a really, as much, if not more, than the other issues. A great showcase of Palpatine's manipulations of Anakin.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, but he's just such a nice old guy. You know what I mean? I mean, he was saying that if he could just order the Jedi to do whatever, then he'd be a dictator, and that's definitely not what he wants. I mean, he just seems like such a nice guy,
Such, fantastic dramatic irony. And he's like, truthfully, I should have never involved you in a Senate matter. It was entirely inappropriate, but I...
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Palpatine's just a pro. And I mean, just his manipulations of the young Anakin, really fantastic. And then his scene with Obi-Wan actually went a lot better than I expected him to be like really pissy and stuff. But he was very, kind of well composed, and he offered like some valid points, talking about how he originally joined the Jedi, and how he even said how he thought he might want to come back at some point. And then Obi-Wan doesn't really put up a fight. Halfway because I kind of figure Obi-Wan thinks he'll be back by next Tuesday.
Yeah.
And obviously, with how this mission plays out, it looks like that's probably going to be the case.
And this also, what's cool is it adds an extra dimension to that scene from The Wrong Jedi. Where Anakin...
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was thinking about when I saw this scene, is like, Anakin's telling Ahsoka, I understand what it means to want to leave the Order. So...
Yeah. And obviously, well, I mean, I think he did as soon as he married Padme.
Yeah, and that's what we all took it to be, when
and I think
that's
still that probably is still the best way to take it. But at the very least, you're right. This is another interesting level to that. Amusingly, in the EU, I think Obi-Wan actually left the Order in like some young reader book for I think about 60 pages. It was like the length of a young reader book. Because I think he wanted to stick around and help out on a civil war where the Jedi weren't letting him. Which almost strikes me as like a similar reason to what Anakin is doing here.
Yeah.
He just wants to be able to help people without the confines of the Jedi binding him.
Which is also similar to what Ahsoka did.
Exactly, in the end. I think, if Anakin left the Order here, I mean, I think people would fairly say it's because of Palpatine's manipulations. At least Ahsoka, very clearly had some legitimate grievances with the Jedi.
Yeah.
Where her decision to not return is entirely understandable. But yeah, I mean, like I said, they're much more low-key than, them having fun down in the lower city. But at the same time, they're still very effective.
Yeah. This series has done a great job with Palpatine. Just making, everything he says just feels Palpatine. I mean, it's perfect. It's spot on.
Yeah, you can imagine Ian McDiarmid saying it.
Yeah.
It's just fantastically done. And I mean, I know, we're not speaking as highly of this issue as we have as some of the other ones, especially the few that opened it.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, by no means do I think this is a bad issue. I think this is still fantastic.
It's still a good issue. I mean, both of these this week were very solid issues, and it's kind of almost... We've had so many solid issues in a row that, if everything is great, something that's only good starts to seem not that great, That's just how it is.
I think we're starting to...
But if you were to compare this to some of those issues from the Star Wars line and the Chewbacca ones and, some of the other issues we had, this is a very good issue.
I mean, I think, I think obviously a lot of those series took a while to find their footing. Vader did, Star Wars did, because I think Rebel Jail is probably its strongest arc yet. Um, feel free to disagree, but I think it is. And then obviously this is fantastic. And I think their miniseries have been, for the most part, hit and miss. When they're good, they're very good. When they're not, they're... obviously I didn't love Leia, I didn't love Chewbacca. And within the miniseries, Shattered Empire was very hit and miss.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Shattered Empire was bad, but it's definitely not as good as Obi-Wan and Anakin, or something like that, or Lando.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So again, I think just the Star Wars comics have been getting better. I'd say.
Yeah.
And whether that's because they found their footing or they're finding creative teams that get the characters better,
well,
I couldn't say.
Yeah, because isn't this one? This is Soleil.
This is Soleil, who did Lando.
Right?
He's doing Poe Dameron right now.
Yeah.
And I think Poe Dameron we're a little too early in to judge if that'll be a success or not.
Yeah, and the guy who does Darth Vader, he did something else too, right?
I think Kieran Gillen's only done Vader.
He's only done... Did he do the Darth Vader annual?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely Soleil has been doing a good job with his with what he's been writing. Gillian's been doing a great job. So yeah, I think they're definitely finding with the writers that are doing it well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. And hopefully, they'll continue this trend of excellent issues in the weeks to come.
Yeah. Well, guess that's pretty much about it here, huh?
I think you are correct.
All right. Well,
I don't think I have anything else to talk about.
Yeah. Yep. Well, what do we have next week? Do we have any comics coming out?
Yeah, I was actually in the process of looking them up when my browser closed on me. So let me just give me a second. I'll figure it out for sure.
Well,
don't worry, we definitely have something. Probably Star Wars, if I had to guess. I feel like it's been a while since we've got an issue of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Poe Dameron, probably not. We just got that 2 weeks ago. What?
Yeah, we just got Poe. We just got Vader. But who knows? Vader's been releasing a mile a minute.
Yeah.
So, I could wind up being very wrong on that count. Oh, man. There's another series coming out I'll have to read. Crap. Yeah, it looks like Star Wars is coming. And I'll have to find Marvel section over here, which is just annoying. The life I live, I tell you.
Yeah.
Here we go. Well, I found the Marvel section.
Yeah, well, and as well as that comic, I don't think we know what we're going to be doing next week. We're not going to be doing anything else this week, partially because we had the Darth Vader comic to do left over from last week, and partially because we're just busy this week. But yeah, so we'll probably have
just Star Wars next week.
Okay,
is the only
just Star Wars.
So we'll have to get something else too.
Yeah, so we'll have Star Wars next week, and then something else. When does Bloodlines come out, by the way?
That is May 3rd, so that'd be something good for the week after.
Yeah, it'd be the week after. So maybe we will do a EU novel next week.
Maybe we'll finally do Easy Credits, which we've been teasing for about a month.
Yeah, Easy Credits.
Order a copy of the Star Wars Adventure Journal.
Yep. Yeah, I guess we still need to find one of those.
Or find it online. We have options.
Or find it online. Yep, we got options. All right. Well, as always, if you want to reach us, send us an email. You can do that at fasterandmoreintense@gmail.com. You can check us out on Facebook at Faster and More Intense. We're on Twitter at FMI Podcasting. You can also find us on iTunes at Faster and More Intense Podcasting and on YouTube at Faster and More Intense Podcasting. Star Wars is the exclusive trademark of Lucasfilm Limited. All Star Wars names and sounds are the exclusive copyright of Lucasfilm or parent company. All content generated on this site is the exclusive intellectual property of Faster and More Intense.